Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, your global feel-good radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how to heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is a fascinating person. You're going to learn a lot from Dr. John Beaulieu. Dr. John Beaulieu is a psychologist, a naturopath, and a sound healer. He is the president of Biosonic Enterprises, a company dedicated to sound healing using tuning forks. Dr. John Beaulieu is also the author of not just one, but 4 books, including Human Tuning, Sound Healing with Tuning Forks. And you can find out more about Dr. John Beaulieu and his wonderful work at his website, www.biosonics.com. Welcome, Dr. John Beaulieu.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and to do this interview.
Well, you know, I found out about Dr. John Beaulieu years ago. I had to share this story for our audience because years ago I had a client and he was I'll just say he was a very high up Catholic priest. He was a Monsignor. Now, some people think, oh, well, somebody like that wouldn't be open to natural healing. Well, I worked with him over time. And what I discovered through working with him was that he could actually be healed by sound. And so I started studying sound healing. And for me, this included reading books about sound healing and also listening to CDs. And Dr. John Beaulieu has a wonderful CD. I believe it's called Calendula. Is that right?
Calendula. Yes.
And when you listen to it, it's like you're getting all your musical sound vitamins. And as we've discussed many times here on the Natural Healing Show, all disease, all illness is slowed down vibration. So by putting yourself in a high vibrational environment, such as you experience through sound healing, you can actually shift the energies and feel better. The other thing that's very, very interesting is that a supplement, a medication, everything is a vibration. And we know this. There's vibrational remedies like homeopathy and flower essences, but there's also sound healing. So let's learn more about this. Now, Dr. John Beaulieu, how did you learn that sound can be used to heal?
Well, I think I learned it intuitively as a child because, you know, I started playing piano probably when I was as early as you can imagine. And I got to a certain point where my parents, I had 2 fire sign parents, they liked to fight. I used to call it the UFO plate wars because they throw plates across the room. And I basically realized that if I played the piano a certain way, I could calm them down. I could change the whole environment in the house by certain sounds, certain rhythms, and so on. So I began just out of, I guess, an internal need to have some peace and quiet or something to settle down the house. I would play and really have an effect not only on my parents, my sisters, and so on. And then gradually that developed into my ability to play piano in general. But really my first playing was to heal, to help things in my own house. And as I progressed through music, I began to realize that how music, like I went through the whole thing with classical music, rock bands, everything. And I began to realize that I could affect people through sound, make them move in certain ways, think in certain ways, relax in certain ways. And I think when I was in college, my 3rd year of college, I went to a psychiatric hospital on a visit and I fell in love with the psychiatric patients. I said, these are my people. And then I began to realize I could integrate music into therapy. And so I just began all of a sudden taking my normal musical background and thinking about it therapeutically. And it was actually the first time I began to call what I was doing a form of therapy and healing. I didn't even understand the word until then. And I saw the effect on the patients. And then that just kept developing until I came to what I'm doing now, which is, like a healing. I like to say sound healing versus music therapy, only because music is a form, underneath of all music is sound. And there's 8 trillion genres of music, and everybody, this music is better than that music. And I don't think that. I think all music can be healing. It's just a matter of how you use it and when. And then but like I say, the building blocks of all music is sound, and anybody can play sound, but not everybody can play Beethoven on the piano. But I guarantee you that Beethoven played sound. So sound healing to me is for everybody, and it does not require particular music skills, and everybody does it intuitively, whether they know it or not.
Now, Dr. John Beaulieu, you come at this issue of sound healing with a great degree of information. You have a PhD in psychology, you have a naturopathic degree, you also have a degree in piano and music.
Yes.
So you bring in a tremendous amount of information from a variety of sources. And I use also, as I mentioned, I started with this client who I realized could be healed by sound. And by healing, I'm talking about getting out of pain with sound. And I bought myself a set of tuning forks. And again, I began studying John Beaulieu's wonderful information. And I wish I had brought up for my studio, because I have a chart, because different tones will balance different chakras and different issues. So, and this is what you talk about in your book, Human Tuning, Sound Healing with Tuning Forks. So, Dr. John Beaulieu, when did you discover that tuning forks can be used for sound healing?
Well, I discovered, I was working at, I was a head therapist at Beaulieu Psychiatric Hospital in New York City. And I had my own laboratory because I was researching what would be the preliminaries of post-traumatic stress syndrome, PTSD. We didn't have the name then, but that's what I was researching. And I had my own lab. I had rats, I had mice. All psychologists have, we like rats and mice. I had my patients in the hospital and so on. This was my life. I was also simultaneously studying with John Cage. I was doing new music in New York City. So I was living this lifestyle surrounded by sound and science, patients. And also, I'd come to New York City from Indiana, because that's where I grew up at. And New York City was a shock to me, to say the least. And one day I got in an argument with a person in a subway booth. And people from Indiana don't start yelling like that, but in New York, we learned how to fight. And so I got back up to my laboratory, and basically my ears, knew I was upset. And in my laboratory, I had an anechoic chamber. Now, an anechoic chamber is a room designed by engineers to be completely silent. It was actually put in my lab, unknown to me, by the CIA in the 1950s, probably to do experiments and interrogation. But it happened to be in my lab in the corner. So I got to use it. And I went in and I sat down in the anechoic chamber. And my nervous system, which I'd listened to before in the anechoic chamber, is a high pitch. But then all of a sudden it was like this screaming, and it was so loud, and my body, I could feel my body tight, and I didn't even know how much this argument had affected me until I got in there. And I said, I have to do something. And it just popped in my mind, this intuition, right? This popped in my mind. You can tune yourself like a string. So I ran downstairs. There happened to be New York City, there's a music store downstairs. So I ran downstairs. I got the tuning forks, which I knew about from my music training. I brought them back up. I tapped the C and G tuning fork. I said, held them to my ears like so. And my nervous system went from E to just like an ohm, a perfect sound like that. And I felt my whole body relax. This unbelievable wave of relaxation came over me. And that's basically was my introduction to the power of this sound to healing. It's so powerful that this was in 1973 or 4, and it's so powerful that I'm still writing books about it and doing research to this day and teaching and so on.
I just absolutely love that story that you just told, Dr. John Beaulieu. And I want to point something out because, so many of my clients want to be more intuitive. And I am a medical intuitive. I'm a professional intuitive. And I'm always saying that to be intuitive, you have to be in tune.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm actually writing the whole chapter for a professional book just with that title almost.
No, yes, you have to be in tune. So what do you have to be in tune with? The first is you have to be in tune with yourself.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right? And then you have to be in tune with, your higher source, God, right? All that is, the oneness, right?
Well, when you're in tune with yourself, that's what appears. It just downloads in a way. That's you realize who you are, and that's who you are. And that's basically, that's what happened to me in the anechoic chamber. I had this, we might say in today's language, a download that didn't stop. Right?
Yes. Yeah. So when you're wanting to be more intuitive, you have to be in tune.
Yes.
And you can learn a lot about how to be in tune from Dr. John Beaulieu. Now, for our audience, and you know how whenever I do these interviews, I always try to be prepared. And I realized just now that a sheet of information that I use when I use tuning forks is downstairs, but you have this. Would you go over for our audience each musical note, which chakra it balances, what particular issues, so that we understand, so to speak, our musical sound vitamins?
Yeah, I'm going to do it as simply as I can, meaning that first of all, you have to be in tune. I think we agree on that. And the tuning, basically, in a way, has nothing to do with the chakras. You're basically in tune, right? You're in balance. I'd like to say your intuitive self and your objective self are both present and both have a voice, and that you are clear in sight. And I also like to say being in tune is the most boring thing in the world. Because
it's neutral.
Yeah, it's neutral. It's neutral. That's right. Being in tune is neutral. It's like having your car in neutral and wanting to go somewhere, but you can't, right? So the chakras are neutral. Once you shift into gear, you're in your chakras, right? So now in tune gives you a sense of where you want to go. So you're sitting there, you're neutral. All of a sudden, something comes to you, a motivation, and you say, I want to serve, I want to do something. The moment you want to do something, you activate your chakras.
Okay, and may I interrupt you? For our audience, would you explain from your perspective, what is a chakra?
Yeah, a chakra, well, the Sanskrit just means spinning wheel of energy. A chakra is a spinning vibration. A chakra, I like to explain it in a more neutral way, that a chakra is like the gears of a car when you shift gears. So you have first gear, second gear, and each gear has a different sound actually and winds out differently, has a different frequency, it has different ways to use it. So the names they gave the gears were ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And earth would be slow, water would be a little faster, fire would be faster, and air would be the fastest, and ether would be like neutral. And in order to go from one gear to the other, you have to have neutral. So if you're not in tune, you can't shift your gears in order to drive your body through life. And what happens oftentimes is people who aren't able to shift, then they experience dissonance, they experience problems and challenges in their life, and depression, which is quite common. So that being able to shift gears is also what we call in stress science, the ability to adapt and change the different situations. So sometimes we have to move faster, sometimes we have to move slower, sometimes we have to move fast and slow rapidly. Those are all the chakras. Chakras is another name for moving through the field of, navigating the field of energy and meeting life challenges with different types of gears.
Okay, so could you go over our musical sound vitamin and talk about which musical notes balance each specific chakra?
It's not so much the notes, although the notes, for me, it's the relationship between notes. Consciousness really is relationship. In other words, pure consciousness is in a way no relationship, but we know consciousness through balanced relationship or being in tune, right? So therefore, I chose when I did tuning forks to have the sounds relate to one another. So if I said C and G, that would be a C note and a G note. Together, they make a relationship. That relationship in India was called the divine dance of Shiva and Shakti. It was in China called the perfect balance of the yin and yang. I call it human tuning, right? So C and G creates, in a way, an etheric space of human tuning. And then you would think Earth, well, Earth would be the lowest gear, and Earth actually is one note. Earth is low. It's just a low pitch. The lowest pitch is always Earth. And we need different amounts of Earth. I said elephant needs more Earth than a butterfly, right? So different times in our life, we have to have pitches that are lower or higher, but the lowest pitch will always be Earth. Sometimes we need butterfly Earth, sometimes we need elephant Earth. And then, so Earth is just one note, and in my tuning forks, it's a tuning fork with weights on it that you can put on your body and use acupuncture points and so on. But Earth can get deeper and deeper. And then we have water. Now, water would be the relationship of two notes. Usually it's a C and a D or a C and a B, because that gives us a sense of flow. And those spaces and those intervals basically activate water. We say the water element. But it's the relationship that does it. You could also activate it through your voice. If I speak in an earthy voice, I go, hello, everything's organized for my interview and low, like so. But a watery voice is like Moon River. Oh, I just want to keep talking. I go on and on. I never stop. And it's 5 o'clock and I should go home, but I can't. I have to keep talking. It just keeps moving like so. So C and D or C and B become that kind of energy. And then C and E becomes fire. And again, there's two different fires. One would be a more earthy fire, motivation, get that done. The other C and A was called in alchemy the rising of the phoenix out of the ashes. It meant the ascension of the spiritual fire. Edgar Cayce called it the interval of the mystic. I think it's really the interval for intuition, because intuition, you get your intuition like that, that's fire, and that C and A will open up that gateway. And then we have air, and air basically becomes like a C. Earthy air is C and F, and then C and G, which leads to ether, is also the last thought. Air is thought and quickness. So multitasking is air. So we have this particular interval and we listen to it, our mind begins to calm down, and then the thoughts begin to organize themselves better. You could also, some people say that it follows the musical scale, like C is earth, D is water, and so on. And actually you'll find that the intervals do follow that, except for, again, when you use the spaces, there's something about the relationship between sounds that activate consciousness in a certain way. So I work with single notes, but I primarily work with relationships.
That makes sense. Now, Dr. John Beaulieu, what is your view of the importance of being still and listening? In other words, the practice of mindful listening.
Well, my view of that is that it's everything. If you can't be still, being still is another word for being in tune. So when you're still inside, when you know stillness, we also call it silence music. John Cage says that all sounds arise from silence and they return to silence. And so our stillness is our quietness inside. It's the space, we call the etheric space we need to be in relationship with that and what we are perceiving. So to me, if you don't have stillness, that's what meditation's for. We meditate in order to come to a place of stillness inside. Now, the problem with meditation is that it's not everything. It's the chakras inner, because now we're in tune. And if you look at, there's a spiritual book in India called the Bhagavad Gita. And in that book, there's a great spiritual master, Krishna, who's talking with Arjuna, who's a great warrior and also a great meditator. He's the greatest archer in India, but he has to shoot his own relatives on the field of challenge or dharma. We shoot our relatives today, but it's called we get upset with them, right? but basically, Arjuna says, Krishna tells him to shoot. He says, no, I'd rather meditate. I'd rather be still. I'm a great meditator. I just want to go. I just want to be quiet. I want to avoid all of this. And Krishna says to him, you can't do it. There's two forms. There's only one meditation, the meditation of action. And essentially, meditation that we think of stillness, ingrained stillness inside of us so that we can take very accurate action. And we can, in other words, like we said in the beginning, you can know intuitively and you can know objectively. You have a real sense of balance about the action that you're taking with your chakras in the world. So that's, to me, my concept of stillness and action.
Yeah, I just love that explanation of it. And, Dr. John Beaulieu, most of us who practice natural healing for a living, we have personal practices that allow us to be in tune. So for myself, for example, the second I open my eyes every morning lying in bed, I start praying and meditating and doing breath work. And it's by tuning myself in that way, I get in the vibration where I can receive the information so that I can be of service. And what's interesting is I actually tune myself with the Lord's Prayer. And most of us know the words to the Lord's Prayer. I certainly know the words to the Lord's Prayer. But what I notice about myself is I'll start repeating the Lord's Prayer in my own mind. But if I start stumbling over the words, then I know I'm not in vibrational alignment.
Yes.
Like I need to be. And so I just keep using that prayer until I feel and experience that I am in tune. So my question to you is, how do you use silence and how do you get in tune?
Well, I think you said something to me that's really important. That is, you have a daily practice, right? And to me, a lot of my patients that I saw over the years, I've seen thousands of people in very serious cases, they did not have a daily practice, right? And I look for a way for them to have a daily practice. And I found that taking a C and G tuning fork once in the morning and once at night, and tapping it on your knees or on an activator and listening to it, no more than max 2 minutes, it would be a practice people could do and have a good thought. And I began to see right away the benefits my patients would achieve by this. Now, I also say it's not any different than your practice, right? It's not any different than yoga. The main thing is something that we do daily. It could be meditation, it could be yoga, it could be listen to the Lord's Prayer, which I've written on the Lord's Prayer also, by the way. It's the basis of 12-step programs and so on. It's the basis of sound healing as far as I'm concerned. But all of these things that bring us a unity inside, in other words, there's so many different ways to tune ourselves, right? And the problem I had was sometimes when people say, well, do yoga for a half hour or meditate for a half hour. And people would go meditate for a half hour for a few days and stop. And then they would get the cognitive therapy because they think of themselves as failures for messing up their practice and da-da-da. So I wanted something, my consideration was, it's not how long you do something, it's how well you do something and how consistently you do something. So I went with basically a 1 minute, minute and a half tuning fork meditation. Even once a day would be fine as long as it's regular. And I found that people also get the thought they're successful, and that begins to grow and grow and grow. And by the way, I like your practice of the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
It's just pure sound. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy sound. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. That you have to bring, that when you're intuitive, you tune into that place that comes through you as a vibration, and you have to find a way to express it. That's really what's the whole basis of my work.
Yes, absolutely. And, I'm human, and there's certainly mornings where I stumble over the words. And when I stumble over the words, I'm like, okay, right. I just go back to the beginning and I keep repeating it until it comes all the way through.
Yeah.
When it comes all the way through smoothly, and it's a felt sensation, like I can feel when I'm in alignment, right? But my intention is to be in alignment with divine will.
Yes.
Right? And to be that channel where, divine information can come through. Now, you were talking about using C and G tuning forks. So when we listen to C and G simultaneously, what does that actually do?
Well, first you're listening to a relationship, right? And you got one in one ear, one in the other. So basically they're combining. And when they combine, they create a pulsation that gives that. We do it, like I said before, intuitively or mystically, it's Shiva and Shakti or yin and yang. But scientifically, that pulsation spikes a molecule in your body called nitric oxide, one nitrogen, one oxygen molecule. That molecule is a precursor. It creates a gas that rises in your heart cells, your endothelial tissue, your neuronal tissue, and your immune cells. And it pulsates, this gas, it rises and falls. It rises 3 seconds and falls 3 seconds. It's a rhythm that should be going on 24 hours a day. It has to do with natural detoxification. It's an antiviral, antibacterial, and vasodilator. And when that rhythm is compromised, or when the nitric oxide rhythm is flatlined, it's a precursor to every disease you can imagine. And this is pure medicine. That's heart disease, strokes, depression, autoimmune diseases, upper and lower motor neuron disease, diabetes. In other words, it goes on and on and on. And when you're in tune, that molecule, that nitric oxide molecule, is basically working as it's a signaling molecule that gets all kinds of scavengers in your body that gets rid of toxins and things like that. So when you don't get in tune, all these things build up inside of you. Your cell walls thicken, the lymphatic, they get closer together. Lymphatic cells can't come through to detoxify you, right? And basically, over a period of time, that's going to manifest as probably epigenetic breakdown and a disease.
And all this, we can turn around these tendencies just with tuning forks. So for our audience, can you explain how this would actually work? So we get a C tuning fork and a G tuning fork. Do we clang them together? Do we get a...
Well, there's 2 ways to do it. And also, I would say my website I have the product videos to make sure people do it right, and my books.
Okay.
But basically, you can tap them on your knees and hold them to your ears, and it's a very quiet sound. Or you could tap them together and then move with them, like Qigong or something like that. Yeah. So there's 2 different ways to act. We call them one psychoacoustic and one vibroacoustic ways of activating them.
Right. So very, very simple ways. And
simple.
Again,
the simpler the better.
Simpler the better. Absolutely. I agree. And again, we know this works because every drug is a vibration. Every supplement is a vibration. And the scientific research shows that you can either give the person the drug or the vibration, either one will work. Now, Dr. John Beaulieu, what is the science relating to the use of tuning forks and sound healing? How does all this work?
Well, that was the nitric oxide part. That's pretty much the main science, but I think also you want to look at other vibrational field science. So recently we're looking at the question of consciousness and quantum mechanics and so on. And basically you find that sound is a vibration, that you can make a strings vibrating back and forth, but they make notes. That we think of sound as being sound traveling through the air, but all sound also creates no sound. It's called a place of nodes. And so I'm very interested in what we call nodes and consciousness, because as you enter we can say each state of mind is a frequency. So how do you change frequencies? In other words, when you think emotion, for example, if you get too involved with your emotion, you lose track of the frequency of your emotion. That's earlier what you call the felt feeling of something, or the sensation of it. Yeah. We call this somatic psychology. You ask yourself, well, I'm thinking this, I'm having this emotion, but can you feel the vibration of the emotion and disassociate it from your thoughts and what you're calling an emotion? Because it's only a vibration. And once you can learn to do this, then your body begins to let that energy come through without associations. And once you can do that, you can go back and you can look at a traumatic event and you can say, wow, you can't change the event, but you can change the energy moving through you. That's basically the basis of this. And that's why sound is so effective in post-traumatic stress and all traumatic situations. Because you bypass your belief systems, you bypass your thoughts, your judgments. All of a sudden, you're in this space of just pure vibration. And in this pure vibration, there's nodal points, and your consciousness can literally transcend at that point. And it comes back, and everything that was upsetting you no longer is upsetting you. You have more space around it.
You know, I think what you said there is so profound and so important for our audience to understand, that sometimes you can't change what happened, but you can change the energy that you're living in. Right?
I like to say you can change your relationship to what happened.
Yeah.
And sound helps you do that in a big way.
Right. And what I find with so many of my clients is they get stuck in their story, right? So especially the victim story, whenever you're in a victim story, this happened, those bad people did this or that to me. And on one level, that may be true. But on the other hand, you want to get into your power, and that's realizing that you're a soul. Why did you create this? Why did you attract this? But beyond all the why and the story behind it, what can you do to release that frequency of grief, of anger, of trauma? And these nonverbal natural healing methods like sound healing, like breath work, are incredibly helpful for just moving the energy so that you don't get stuck there, right?
Yes. And I think these methods work also really well with what we call cognitive behavioral therapy. In other words, you have a thought, and that if that thought has to be based on some kind of evidence, you can think anything you want. Like for instance, I had a man that came to me and he said he was really upset about his father was going to die and this and that. He knew his father was going to die. He was living in the future about it. He was already going through all the emotions of his father dying and da-da-da. And I said, is your father still alive? He said, yes. I said, but you're in the future. He hasn't died yet. You know, and so let's slow down, let's breathe, let's tune, let's be there, let's be present, let's tell the truth. You're worried about your father dying, but you don't have grief yet. And now, just so you know, that was in 1997, and his father's still alive. So, I mean, you don't know. People get off in their thoughts, and they say things to themselves that they can't even prove. So when you combine that with this sense of like, let me tune into my sadness, and then you say, well, wait a minute, get out of my thoughts, I have sadness. Underneath my sadness is a vibration. My sadness is a frequency. It's a feeling tone in psychology. If you can just focus on the feeling tone and breathe and make it, it becomes a mantra, a meditation. You could say, the things that victimize me are my mantra, right? And if you did that and you just focus on it and not get caught up in it, after a while, the vibration will move through you in a neutral way. So when you go back and revisit what happened to you that traumatized you, it doesn't change, but it doesn't catch you. It doesn't overwhelm you. You are now, it's just like a dream you're looking at versus, as you could say, you know, it's no longer has that sense of hard edge reality to it.
Right. And I tell my clients, you'll know you're over something when you can tell the story about what happened, without pulling up the negative emotions behind it.
Yeah,
So,
or because when even the emotions come, you're no longer possessed by them. In other words, emotion means energy and motion, right? So all of a sudden, because now the energy can move through you, whereas before it would get blocked, it would get caught up, and it backs up. And then you go seek a bunch of other people to tell your story to, and all you do is repeat your trauma over and over again, rather than let it move through you.
yes, absolutely. Now, Dr. John Beaulieu, how important do you think it is for people to play sounds and enjoy making sound? How does this help in today's world?
Well, I think it's very, very important. And for instance, I play every day. It's sort of funny. We were talking about you do the Lord's Prayer. I do Bach. I do a Bach convention every day just to see if I can play it, because it makes me focus. And then I have my tuning forks. I have all my practices. But it's really, really important in today's world, because the research shows, by the way, if you just take and play sound, just play, right? Like a kid, you play sound and get into it. It suspends your critical mind. In other words, you're no longer now in a place inside of yourself that you're self-critical of yourself, self-judgmental of yourself. You're just into sound and traveling. The research is unbelievable. Your body makes more painkillers. It makes more dopamine. It makes more anandamide. And by the way, anandamide is a molecule in science called ananda, the molecules of bliss. It's also the same molecules that one gets out of CBD and the marijuana products now, but you're getting it through sound. That's why people say they get high on music and so on. You literally do get high. It's just a matter of using it correctly in the right context.
Right. And what's interesting, I have a client that I work with who's a professional musician, and he also has chronic lifelong depression. But what he notices is when he exercises and when he plays music, he's out, he's in neutral, he's out of his head in a good way. He's out of the stories in his mind, right? So he gets into the flow and he feels good.
Yeah. Now the problem with that, but that's a good thing. I give you examples of all kinds of musicians. I was thinking about jazz musicians, for example. They want to play for 10 hours straight, 3 days straight. Like I think of the jazz pianist Bill Evans. He became a heroin addict because he would play music. He was fine, but he did not know how to handle his life outside of music. So that's why I say it's good to have sound integrated with something like cognitive therapy, so you could learn how to deal with your life and use sound as an integrative tool to make it function better.
Right.
So it's not magic. Sound isn't magic. It takes, if it's not in the right context, you get high on it, and then when you get high on it, you're going to crash. So these guys play music for 12 hours straight, then they crash. It's better you play sound. Like when I used to perform a lot, when you're off stage, you have to learn how to transition to a different life. Now, they use a lot of the old musicians get off stage, they come up against their critical self, they go to heroin, drugs, and things like that. Whereas I learned to get off stage. I take a hot and cold shower. I learned how to have my nice tea, and eventually I didn't have to deal with drugs. I learned natural methods of coming down.
Now, Dr. John Beaulieu, how can sound healing help with adapting to a new environment of waves that permeate our planet?
Well, that's really a good one, because I would say right now we have a few more waves in the air than we had 50 years ago, or even 10 years ago, or 3 years ago. It's said that our grandparents and our great-grandparents, we process more information in a day than our grandparents processed in a lifetime.
Wow.
Right? Basically, I give you a good example of this. I had a group of students at a university in California. We had a Faraday cage that blocks all the Wi-Fi waves and stuff, and it's really silent in there. I took them inside the Faraday cage, and they freaked out because in other words, their whole life from the womb on, they've been experiencing all these waves in the atmosphere, and all of a sudden they're not there. It's almost something's out of their life. They're missing. And and we like to say that there's trillions of these new waves. You can't go anywhere without Wi-Fi. You go in the middle of Antarctica, I'm sure you get a Wi-Fi signal.
Yes.
So it's a wave, and so we are being challenged constantly. And we think, oh, we don't hear these waves, but actually the research shows that we do. We don't hear them consciously, we hear intuitively for sure, but these waves are constantly wanting to move through us, and so by being in tune, by working with all kinds of different rhythms and sounds and moving your body, you need to be constantly open to this change. And waves create change within change within change. I mean, just think about it. We had records, then we had CDs, then we had cassettes, then we had CDs, and now we don't even have that. It's guaranteed that anything that you like, any wave that you like, will probably be gone tomorrow. So you have to constantly be surfing all these waves. And if you don't, it's going to cause real physical and mental problems. I think we see that. If you do, it's a form of ecstasy. It's exciting. But we're in a time of great change because of all these waves. Here in Florida, we have a community of people that try to live like it's 1950 still. That they can't get out of the waves. You can't do it, you see.
Yeah. Now, Dr. John Beaulieu, you bring up something really important, which is the concept of geopathic stress, which is stress from your environment.
Yep.
And people who live in large urban areas, such as London, such as Tokyo, such as Atlanta, New York, Sydney, there's more people, more sound waves, more EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies. Yes. And this is something that I identify frequently in my medical intuitive readings. And it's why frequently people feel better when they're in nature, when they go to a mountaintop, when they go to the beach, there's less waves. So how do you think that people can use sound and or silence to help them cope with geopathic stress in their environment?
Well, I think you have to, when you learn how to tune yourself, it's not a matter of you tune yourself then, it's a matter of you can tune yourself instantly, right? So that's why I say tuning is boring. And I like the Saturday night movie, The Wild and Crazy Guys, where they run out and party every night. To me, if you live life and you can't party, what a waste of time. But the main thing is, can you recover from party? Can you get out of tune and come back into? And you train yourself to do that. So now if you have all these waves in the city and the horns are honking or things are happening, the phone's going off, whatever. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's perfect, you see, for our talk right now.
Yeah.
Then you have to say, okay, can I bring myself back? In other words, the scientific name for that is, can I self-regulate back into neural coherence? Right? And you have to do that fast, very fast in the city. Whereas you in nature, the nature is basically CNG. It's the Fibonacci series. It's you're sitting in an environment that's naturally tuned. It's got ambient sound baths going on all the time. That's fine, But again, I lived in New York City. I was at Bellevue Psychiatric Hospital. You talk about crazy, and I had to find ways. I can't go, okay, I'm going to center myself because the patient's going to jump out the window. I have to be centered and know what to do simultaneously. So you build in, that's why a consistent practice, I mean, literally over day after day after day and year after year after year, builds in that unbelievably reservoir of silence and tuning for you to tune quickly in difficult situations.
Absolutely. So that daily practice. So I can feel when I'm going out of tune, right?
Yes, you feel it. You begin to know it. And then you self-regulate because you're conscious that you're out of tune. You're not beating yourself up for it. In fact, you say it was a good party. It was a good performance, whatever it was. Now I just know what to do. And you let yourself go back in.
Right. So Dr. John Beaulieu, you're bringing together so much wonderful information from the worlds of psychology, naturopathic medicine, and sound. What are your final thoughts for our audience? What are your general views about how we can integrate sound healing into medicine?
Well, for me, sound healing is a form of preventative medicine. And preventative is very hard because you can't prove that what you never had. But it's been around for thousands of years. It's been come in different ways. I try to find a more neutral way to express it in our modern times. But certainly it's nothing new. And if you could use it as a daily practice. It could be, and if you do this over a period of time, it's going to help everything you're doing in your life. And also, if you have a particular medical condition, I would want to integrate it with treating that. That's what I do. I see people who are depressed, who have different conditions that are very serious. I insist they have a practice. Because once you have a practice, it begins to help you integrate the medicine and make it work better. And I don't care whether it's an allopathic medicine, a naturopathic medicine. I think every medical doctor would tell you that these practices are fundamentally important. The science is there, the research is there, the research is literally off the charts. It's just a matter of you have to do it. You have to practice it. And if you try to say, like I say, if you try to practice too much all at once, it's not going to help you. It has to be something you do consistently. And tuning forks and sound are very, very fast. But like I said before, you can do the Lord's Prayer. You can have a mantra. You can do yoga. You could have some sort of, for me, when I was younger, it was just playing Bach every morning. I didn't even know it was a practice, but I did it because I noticed that I felt better. So there has to be a consistent practice, and that over time will build into you this unbelievable resilience in dealing with things in your life. And you do that with a little help from your friends, a good community, maybe some good therapy here and there and healing. It all comes together.
You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, your global feel-good radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Our guest today has been psychologist, naturopath, sound healer, and musician, Dr. John Beaulieu. You can find out more about Dr. John Beaulieu and his wonderful work and his tuning forks at biosonics.com. And remember, when you take the time to be in tune with yourself, natural healing flows effortlessly. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.